Welcome back to the Rejuvenate, Focus and Relax series of podcasts by Apex Hotels. I'm Celine Morin, a well-being expert, and in this podcast, you're going to learn how to manage your energy, to rejuvenate, and to use motion and movement in order to shift your emotion. So one of the biggest concerns hitting this generation is the fact that we are inactive, that we are not moving around a lot. You might have heard of the term sedentary. And the reality is that many of us are sitting for more hours than we sleep. So what does this mean? Well, sitting too much has been called sitting is the new smoking. When we sit, we don't move around a lot. What also happens is we compromise on our posture. Many of us start to slouch and we cross our legs, we might lean forward. We also don't breathe as deeply because we close the capacity in our lungs. And so that means that our brain doesn't get as much oxygen. And when we sit still, it only takes about 20 or 30 minutes before our metabolism starts to slow down. We don't burn as much fat. In fact, there's a compound in your bloodstream that really doesn't work that well when you're not moving. It's called lipoprotein lipase, and it breaks down fats in your capillaries and your blood vessels. And so there's a lot of reasons why we should not be sitting as much as we do. So what should we do? How do we create a change in this not so good behavior? Well, the one thing is to think about, maybe right now, I'm not sure where you are listening to this podcast, but you may be sitting, and if you are, is there a possibility that you could stand? And if you can't, could you think about the next time that you sit, either at a desk, in front of a television, or in a meeting? Is it possible for you to stand up more? So maybe you could get yourself a stand-up desk. Maybe you could do what I do, is because I'm on the go so much, when I arrive at a hotel, instead of just sitting on the couch and slumping over my laptop and catching up with emails, I try and see if I'm able to create my own stand-up desk. I just pack some books, put my laptop on top, and then stand a bit. What could also help is when you have to have a meeting with somebody, if it's a one-on-one meeting, why not try and walk and talk? So I call that having a walkie-talkie. Why would you go to this trouble to move more during the day? Well, when we move, when we exercise, there's a compound in our brains that gets released. So Dr. John Medina, who's a doctor who's done a lot of work around how we can maximize our brain performance. And this compound that gets released when we move is called BDNF. That stands for brain-derived neurotropic factor, and basically what it does is it acts like fertilizer for your brain. There's also another really interesting researcher called Amy Cuddy, who's done a lot of work in how your posture can affect the way that you feel. And what we know is when you sit or when you stand in what we call a power posture, so that means your shoulders are back, your back is up straight, and you're standing and taking up as much space as you can, that you can actually shift your internal chemistry after a very short time, just a couple of minutes. You can actually lower your stress hormone, cortisol, and that's a good thing because cortisol is a killer. It increases aging, it increases a process called inflammation, it reduces your immune system, makes it easier for your body to put on weight. So if you can get rid of cortisol, that's really good. And the other thing that happens is you raise your assertiveness hormone, testosterone. So really compelling, robust research showing that when we use power posture, when we stand, when we use movement, we can really shift the way that we feel. The reality, though, is that if you're like me and you travel a lot, that means that you spend time in trains, in planes, maybe commuting in your car. And so when you have the opportunity to stand and work or to go for a walk, that's a really good thing. If you're arriving at a hotel, one of the first things to do, rather than sitting down and just slumping into work mode, is to take 5 or 10 minutes and to do some kind of activity. If you're at Apex, then you may be able to go and use the leisure facilities. You may be able to access the gym. But if you're not inclined to do that, you can simply, in your hotel room, do what I call a high-intensity interval training session. So I'm sure you've come across HIIT, H-I-I-T, and provided you don't have any health risk issues or problems with your heart or injuries, what a HIIT session does is it allows you in a short amount of time to rejuvenate and to energize yourself. So perhaps you could do a few press-ups, a few squats, a few lunges, and that's one way to get blood flow going, to create fresh oxygenated blood to come to your brain and to energize yourself, rather than just, reaching for another cup of coffee and trying to plow through some work. If you're really keen to go outdoors and the weather's great, maybe you could go for a quick brisk walk or try a quick running route. There's a great book that I've recently read by Tim Ferriss, who's an energy performance expert, and his book, Tools of Titans, highlights the importance of movement. So what he did is he interviewed many top achievers and high-performing individuals that manage their energy and their well-being. And what they generally have in common is that they do use motion throughout the day to activate their bodies. So try to never sit for longer than half an hour, definitely not longer than an hour, without standing up and stretching and moving, even if it is just for a minute or two, to grab a glass of water, to just energize yourself and get back to what you're doing. Chances are you'll probably be more effective, more efficient, more engaged once you get back after creating some movement. So avoid sitting for too long. Use motion to shift your emotion. And if you found this podcast helpful and at all useful, please rate, review. We'd love to know how we're doing. Share this with a friend, a colleague, or somebody that you know could also use this information. And if you'd like to contact me, ask me any questions, I'm available with the handle Celine, my name, on Twitter, CELYNN, or on Instagram using @Resilient Energy. And please stay tuned in for the next episode when we take a look at how to focus. So what kind of techniques you can use to focus and get more done in less time.